Maybe this describes you at some time in your life, or maybe somebody you love. You know, you work hard, you play by the rules, you do everything you're supposed to do, you climb the ladders of success, you climb the ladders of power and prestige, you climb the ladders in your career and in your social life, and everything seems to be going well. By all accounts, you are successful. You have achieved a certain level of success. You are satisfied with your life, and you feel content. But maybe there's something in the back of your mind. You still have that nagging feeling that something isn't quite right. Kind of like a low-level angst that kind of hangs like a backdrop in the back of your life, in the backdrop of your life. Something isn't quite right. Maybe you wonder why you can't be as happy. You don't feel as happy as other people seem to feel, at least on Facebook or Instagram. Perhaps you've got problems in your life, problems at home, problems in your family, problems at work, problems with your finances, problems in relationships, and those problems have started to convince you that maybe not everything is going as well as you thought it was. Or maybe you're happy and everything's going great, but still sometimes you wonder, is this all there is? What's it all for? Or is there maybe something more that I'm missing? If you've ever experienced these feelings, or someone you love has experienced these feelings, they're very common. I've gone through most of these in my life at one point or another. And I think they all stem from one thing, and that is the search for fulfillment in life, the search for ultimate fulfillment in life. And that's why this week we're kicking off a brand new message series that we're calling The Road to Fulfillment. In this 4-week series, we're going to be looking at why some people at some times in their life struggle with feeling fulfilled, and how all of us, whatever we're feeling at the moment, can always experience greater levels of fulfillment and joy in our lives. But to start off with, we need to define some terms, because there's a lot of confusion out there about what fulfillment really means. For instance, some people confuse success with fulfillment. Now, success obviously can be defined in many different ways, but our culture urges us to equate success with material prosperity. After all, we live in an affluent nation. We live in an affluent nation, and wherever you live, wherever you are watching us online, wherever you're here in the Bay Area, you're probably better off than most people in the world. That's not always true. Right here in Marin County, one of the most affluent counties in the United States, there is a growing problem of food insecurity and homelessness, which this church is helping a lot to alleviate through our St. Vincent de Paul program that we're going to ask for a second collection in a couple of weeks. This program helps people in our local area stay in their homes and pay their bills during some rough economic times. So not everyone is affluent. I get that. But more likely than not, you've gone to college. You have or have had a good paying job that pays the bills. Maybe if you're a little older, you've managed to accumulate some savings that makes you feel secure financially in the future. It could be that you experience a certain level of status in this community. And if you're really lucky, you might have even been blessed with one or more trappings of success. You know, like a nice home or a luxury vehicle, or a membership in a private club, or even a second home or a vacation home. Those are good things. Those are good things. But fulfillment is not the same thing as material success. You probably already know that. I was talking to our lead guitarist over here, Jackson. That's Jackson. Hi, Jackson. He's here every Sunday with the rest of the band. And Jackson was sharing with me this picture that you see on the monitor. It is a picture of his 2012 Toyota Prius parked next to a $250,000 McLaren. It's kind of funny, isn't it? I mean, we both laughed when he sent it to me. It's sort of a juxtaposition, you would say. And Jackson and I have talked about this, and he's not offended, but if someone were to look at that picture and say, the owner of the McLaren is more successful than Jackson, at least financially, he'd be right? And we're good with that, right? We talked about that. He'd be right. But Jackson is an accomplished musician, highly sought after around the Bay Area and beyond, as are all our musicians here. Thank you, and we're so blessed to have them here playing every Sunday. And Jackson, as well as the other musicians, is doing what he loves. It doesn't bring him a lot of money, but it brings him a great deal of fulfillment. So money and success, at least from a material standpoint, are not the same thing as fulfillment. You can have all the money in the world and still feel unfulfilled. But what about people who say, well, Father Roger, I feel pretty satisfied in my life. I'm satisfied. I don't make a lot of money, but I'm satisfied. Is that the same thing as being fulfilled? Well, I think it's closer to the mark, but not exactly the same. Because when you look at how social scientists define life satisfaction, they say it is a feeling of contentment associated with having your basic needs, desires, and expectations in life met. Things like work, food, clothing, healthcare, education, and just a decent standard of living. Those are basic needs, desires, and expectations, and when they're met, we pretty much feel satisfied. We feel content with our lives. And you might even say, well, I'm happy. Isn't that the same thing as fulfillment? Well, the Berkeley Project, which I don't agree everything that Berkeley comes out of Berkeley, but the Berkeley Happiness Project defines happiness as a subjective feeling of well-being. Is that fulfillment? Again, I think that's even closer, but not quite, because fulfillment runs deeper than that. Fulfillment, in my view, is this. It's the sense that your existence in life makes sense, makes a difference, and holds ultimate meaning and value. That's harder to realize. That's harder to experience in our life because it's deeper than success, contentment, satisfaction, or even happiness. And it's also elusive. Fulfillment is like a moving target. You may feel, for example, fulfilled in certain aspects of your life, like maybe family, but not in others, like maybe work, or vice versa. You may experience fulfillment at certain times in your life, but not in others. And so it can come and go, this feeling of fulfillment. So it's harder to realize and experience. The premise of this series is the only way we're going to experience true and lasting fulfillment is through our faith and growing in faith. You see, human beings have always had a need for religion. Always. The rituals and structure of religion have always provided a sense of meaning and purpose. They've provided community, an opportunity for fellowship, and a feeling of belonging. Religion has also provided a sense of order in an otherwise chaotic world. But towards the end of the 20th century, massive cultural changes, at least in our nation, have shifted things a bit. These changes have undermined people's trust in traditional institutions, including and especially religion. And to be honest, the church hasn't done any favors for itself lately. And so this lack of trust, combined with significant advances in technology, including the advent of the internet, has created a vacuum and an opportunity for various secular movements to try to come in and replace what religion has always provided to us. These various secular movements, in their attempt to be a substitute for religion, they promise the same thing. that religion does, the same things that religion does. You know, a sense of meaning and purpose, a sense of order, even a sense of identity and a moral code. A lot of these secular movements provide this. Let me just give you one very clear example from our world today. It's the wellness movement. You've probably heard of it. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not criticizing exercise. I go 6 times a week to the gym. I got that humble brag in. Anyway, it's a good thing. But when taken too far, it becomes the new religion. For a lot of people, you know, YMCA and Jazzercise have sort of moved aside to these newer movements like Soul Cycle and CrossFit and Peloton and their imitators, which promise more than just physical fitness. For many people, physical fitness is the new religion, and the instructors of physical fitness are the new clergy. Participants now go to the gym not just to get a workout, they go also to hear a message and to get a sense of meaning. And there's no doubt that these secular movements attempting to replace religion will go even further. For example, the co-founders of Soul Cycle have already moved on. In 2016, they sold their company for $180 million. And you're never going to guess what their latest venture is, unless you've done it. It's called Peoplehood. And it offers 55-minute guided sessions called Gathers, where complete strangers come together and share with each other their deepest hopes and fears in life. All so that they can achieve what they call relational fitness. You see, what the owners of Soul Cycle figured out from that experience was what they were really selling was not physical fitness, but a sense of meaning and connectedness and belonging. That's what they were selling. And that's what these various secular movements attempting to replace religion promise to do. Things like fellowship and communion with each other and a sense of meaning and inclusion that Christian churches have been providing for centuries for free. For free. But the problem with these secular movements attempting to replace religion is they can't ultimately deliver on their promises because they are cheap imitations of true fulfillment. They are false, counterfeit spiritualities that will not last in our lives. They will never give us true fulfillment, and it will never last. For that, we need our faith. For that, we need our faith. And to grow in faith. But you know, this isn't just a problem for today. It's pretty acute today, but this has been a problem all through humanity. And you can look at the ancient Israelite people, right? The ancient Jewish people. They were the first to know and enter into a covenant with the one true God who created everything. And yet, time and time again, wherever they were tempted away. They were tempted away to false idols, pagan religions, counterfeit spiritualities that had been adopted by all the people around them because they wanted to be like the other more powerful, more populated nations. And so they were tempted away from the one true God, worship of the one true God for all these other counterfeit spiritualities. Consider the first reading, for instance. That's what's going on there. It comes from the book of Isaiah in the Old Testament. And Isaiah was an ancient prophet who repeatedly warned the people of the dangers of straying far from God. And so in this first reading, he offers an allegory in the form of a song. And in this allegory, he speaks of a friend. The friend really is God. But this friend, God, has a problem. He's created a vineyard, and he's tended to it with great care. It's a beautiful vineyard. Beautiful. And he expected to receive a full production of juicy, delicious grapes. But that's not what happened. What happened is the vineyard produced sour grapes, wild grapes that couldn't be used for anything. And so the song is really a song of disappointment. And in this allegory, the vineyard represents the people of God. And the grapes that they're supposed to produce is their worship. Their crop and their fruit is worship of God, true worship of God, and faithfulness to God, and love of God. But because they were constantly tempted away, they didn't produce this fruit. They produced sour grapes that couldn't be used for anything. Now, fast forward several hundred years to when Jesus comes on the scene in Jerusalem, and he doesn't like what he sees. He goes into the temple and he sees that the house of prayer, this house of prayer, has been turned into what he calls a den of thieves. The people have been led astray from true worship of God. And this time they've been led astray by their own religious leaders, the chief priests and the elders of the people. And Jesus is not happy. So he borrows this vineyard illustration from Isaiah. And he uses it as the basis of his parable, his story, to make his point. And he adds a few characters. So at the beginning of his story, he talks about a vineyard, and then he says the landowner, the owner of the vineyard, leased the vineyard to tenant farmers, and then went on a journey. Now, back in that agricultural economy, tenant farmers would lease the land from the landowner, and then would hand over, when the crop came, they would hand over a portion of the produce in payment to the landlord. That was what was expected. And in this case as well, the vineyard here represents God's people. And the grapes and the fruit, the crop that's expected, represents their true worship of God. And the tenant farmers here are the ones who are supposed to take care of the vineyard, right? They are the chief priests and the elders of the people, the religious leaders who are supposed to take care of the people and keep them faithful to God and keep them worshiping God, the one true God, in fullness of truth and spirit. But that's not what happened, right? Because in the story, Jesus says when vintage time approached, when the vintage time drew near, the landowner sent his servants to the tenants to obtain his produce, but the tenants seized the servants, and one they beat, another they killed, and a third they stoned. The servants that were sent to collect the produce, the worship and love and faithfulness of the people, were the prophets who had been sent time and time again to bring the people back to God. But it's not what happened, because the wicked tenants wouldn't listen to the servants and threw them out and beat them. And this happened over and over again until finally the landowner said, I'm going to send my own son. They will respect him. But that's not what happened. Here's what happened. When the tenants saw the son, they said to one another, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him and acquire his inheritance. And that's exactly what they did. They seized him, took him outside the vineyard, and had him killed. Obviously, in this parable, the son is Jesus. Jesus who came to restore true faith, who came to restore authentic, genuine worship of the one true God in spirit and truth. But that's not what happened. Right? He was rejected. He was killed by the wicked tenants, the chief priests and the elders of the people. And then Jesus abruptly shifts metaphors. He starts talking about himself as the cornerstone. Cornerstone of what? The cornerstone of the temple in Jerusalem. A temple that had been renovated, had been undergoing renovation for 50 years and would continue to undergo renovation for 30 more years. And Jesus says, I'm the cornerstone, or he implies it basically. I'm the cornerstone. A cornerstone is something that strengthens a building and keeps it standing. But the builders rejected the cornerstone. They rejected Jesus. And so the whole point of this parable is that the religious leaders, the chief priests and the elders of the people, they are the builders who've rejected Jesus, the cornerstone. They are the wicked tenants who would not hand over the crop to God, the crop being true worship of the one true God, the only thing in our lives that will ultimately lead to lasting fulfillment. Now, all this sounds really sad, doesn't it? Kind of heavy. But it's actually a message of great hope. Great hope, because at the very end of that passage, Jesus makes this promise. He says the kingdom of God will be taken away from those wicked tenants and will be given to a people who will produce its fruit. That's you and that's me. We have been given the vineyard. And the only way that you and I can experience true and lasting fulfillment in life is by tending to that vineyard and turning back and growing deeper in what we know is time-tested and true, our faith, the bedrock of our lives. If we're not paying enough attention to our faith, if we're kind of going through the motions, we're never going to feel fulfilled. But when we turn back to it in an even deeper way, that's when life starts making sense. So there is hope for greater fulfillment in our lives. This week, I would invite you to take some time to maybe do a little soul searching. I know it can be uncomfortable, but to ask yourself honestly, how fulfilled do you feel right now? On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your sense that your life makes sense, makes a difference, and holds ultimate meaning and value? It may be uncomfortable, a little painful, it may feel like opening up a can of worms, but every day, God is calling us to lives of greater fulfillment and joy, greater meaning, greater significance, greater love. There is no time and place that you and I will experience perfect and complete fulfillment except in heaven, in eternity. But while we live on this earth, right now together, there is always more fulfillment to be had, more meaning to be gained, more significance to be enjoyed, more love to be shared. So, come back next week, and we'll start unpacking exactly how we get onto this road to fulfillment.